So hi guys, welcome to the channel. I'm joined today by Dan Caleb, who is a Reiki practitioner, Reiki master in the UK. Obviously, if you're watching this on my channel, you're aware that I'm also a Reiki practitioner and Reiki teacher in the UK. And we've been in communication back and forth for quite some time. And we thought it's about time we actually got together and spoke. So here we are. So welcome, Dan, and I hope you're well.
Yeah, hi Ian. Hi everyone. I am well, thanks for asking. And yeah, it's really good to speak to you. For anyone who's watching this, if I end up posting it on my channel, Rising Vibes Reiki, this is Ian Robinson. I did get that right, didn't
Yeah.
I? Ian Robinson, and he has a YouTube channel and various social media pages under Ian Robinson Reiki Zen.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, it feels like I've known Ian for ages, and we and
Seems
I've
like a long time, doesn't it?
and we've never spoken. Like we've never actually like had a
We've
chat. We've
never
only
we've
ever
never
spoken by
done this.
message.
No,
Yeah,
no, never. We've just it's
and
just been
it's
kind of like text messages through Facebook and
mm,
a little bit of interaction via your YouTube videos with your music and things like
yeah,
that. But yeah, we've never really done this. So it's good to actually get together and talk and talk all things well, whatever comes up really, but we're going to
yeah,
touch on like a bit of Reiki and music and life and kind of what got us into these things.
mm.
And it's something I'd like to find out a little bit about you, about obviously the start of your Reiki journey and how it began. I mean, what happened to get you into Reiki?
So I guess a few things happened. Uh, it was around 2017 that I started to become aware of Reiki and get interested in it. And around that time, I had this issue with my throat where it wasn't serious. It was serious enough that I was going to doctors to get it checked out and everything. But I'd say it was more of a nuisance than anything that was really a serious medical problem. And what it was every time I sort of ate some anything really, but especially things that were acidic like apples or yeah, just eating anything really, I had this like it felt like it was clogging up in my throat.
Mm,
Felt like a lot of mucus was like in and around that area, and it just became I became so obsessed with it that it became really frustrating for me, and I went to the doctors like several times, was given pills for acid reflux and things like that, which I felt didn't help. I took them for a month and felt like no difference, but I was
mm.
told come back in 3 months. So I had sort of a 2 month wait before I could tell them that they weren't helping. It was all very frustrating, and all the waiting times with the situation with the NHS in
Yeah,
the UK. So the idea of healing myself became really attractive at that point. I was getting a bit tired of waiting around for somebody else to heal me, whether it be a doctor or anybody else really.
mm,
So when I heard about Reiki and the idea of self-healing, it was just a really attractive prospect.
mm.
And things sort of aligned from there on because later in 2017, I'd been going to this meditation group that my good friend Michael had been running every couple of weeks. Group of us would meet up and meditate and drink some tea and chat. And my friend Suzanne was doing her level 2 and was looking for a case study to do 5 sessions of Reiki with. And so I really just grabbed the opportunity to do that with
Yeah,
her. And I just remember the very first session with her, going to her house, and it was so unusual and and yeah, really lovely. Like I felt really calm. I felt just
yeah,
this great sense of her intention to heal me and me not having to do anything.
mm,
It was
yeah,
really lovely. It made me quite emotional.
yeah,
But it felt like the sensations were really weird. My body was making weird noises, and I had this thing which you may have come across before, giving Reiki or even receiving it, where she had her hands on my shoulder, in my shoulders, I think. And I could feel her hands were slightly shaky at times, but then after a while they became really still.
Mm,
And after a little more time passed, I thought to myself, they're so still. Is she even there?
mm,
And then I heard her walking in front of me.
mm.
She wasn't there. She didn't have her hands on me. I could still feel the sensation of her hands.
Yeah,
And that was in the very first session. It was so unusual, and I love all that sort of mystical stuff.
yeah,
And so my journey sort of went on from there.
yeah.
And my friend Steve was also part of the meditation group. He was a Reiki master teacher. And
Right.
so I asked him if he would consider teaching me,
Yeah.
and my level one early 2018. And that was where it all began.
And that's where it all began. Wow. What do you think that is that because I've come across that before where I've been working on people, or even when I've had Reiki myself from another practitioner, and it feels like they're like at my shoulders or at my head, but they're actually at the other side of the room. What do you think that is? Do you think it's spiritual intervention? Do you think it's like the energy? Do you think it's our imagination or the subconscious? What do you think it actually is? What's your take on it?
I think all of those are interesting takes on it. And I've
Mm,
spoken to Steve about it before. And it's something that's happened to other people who I've given Reiki to. And they've
mm,
said they've felt that my hands were still in particular areas of their body.
mm,
Yeah, so Steve, my Reiki master and friend, I think he says that he believes that it's sort of the Reiki spirits or guides
mm,
sort of leaving their stamp, like remaining with
mm.
the person.
Yeah.
Um, sort of, I guess, yeah, the continuation of the healing, so that it's not just in the
Mm,
time that it's happening. It's we can take it with us.
yeah.
I like that idea.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's a good take as well. Yeah, another way of thinking about it. Absolutely. Yeah. Um, yeah, because when you do energy work, it's totally different to the actual. It's obviously, well, it's obvious really that it is totally different to the physical. So sometimes it's quite difficult to explain to people who are new to Reiki or maybe just starting to maybe have sessions and they have some unusual experiences that they can't explain. So it's good to get people's other maybe thoughts and ideas about it. But obviously if you can't actually see them and see it and see what's going on, then it's down to the individual's, I suppose, perception of what it could be. So yeah, it's nice just to be open to whatever people feel. Um,
yeah, I totally agree with that. Like, I don't really fully have an opinion on what it is.
mm,
But what I do know is that I really like and embrace the mystical, spiritual side of
mm,
Reiki, and I always feel comforted when I have something unusual like that happen.
yeah.
Um, I sort of try and trust and have faith in a benevolence around Reiki, that
Mm,
there are forces for good that are guiding us, helping us, and want good things to happen to us. And the whole
yeah,
process is a healing process.
yeah,
When I
yeah.
talked about the first session I had with my friend Suzanne and how I was getting these unusual sensations in my body, like sounds and feelings and movement around the torso, and I I just put it down to the body's ability to heal itself,
Mm,
and that Reiki gives the client or the patient the opportunity to be at a more peaceful place where their body can do its thing that bodies do, which is
mm,
they heal themselves. And we know that they do that because
yeah,
if we cut our finger, you know, give it a week, the cut will heal over, the body heals itself.
yeah, yeah. That's a really good way of looking at it. I think a lot of people as well don't know where to start with Reiki because when you talk about like healing yourself, I think a lot of people might think, well, I'm in a good place. I don't need any sort of healing. Um, but there comes a time, I think, with with that person, whoever they may be, where you do they can get prodded and poked, and then they react and create anger and create maybe worry is created, and maybe they're not grateful for everything, and like within the Reiki precepts, they're not grateful for each day. And then you realize that actually they're not as in a good a place as what they think they are. So there is some healing that needs to take place because they're allowing all this stuff to overtake in their life and create whatever friction it might be. And fundamentally for me, I think when obviously since becoming like a Reiki teacher, I've looked a lot more into like the Zen, Buddhist, Shinto origins of Reiki, of where it really is a philosophy of just finding inner peace. And in Japan, the actual act of placing hands on healing is very, very minimal. It's more about the actual finding the inner stillness and then being able to do the healing, but you need to heal yourself before you can heal others. And I think that for me now um, really helps to kind of strengthen and deepen the message for Reiki. So when I'm teaching, especially on level one, it's trying to create that understanding of this is why we have the Reiki principles, this is why that they're in this certain order, and this is why we teach in a certain way to create that main staple of stillness within.
Hmm. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I
Mm,
remember when I was being taught my Reiki level one, um, my Reiki master Steve gave me a sheet of paper. This was the first thing that we did. He gave me a sheet and it had a list of things, reasons why I was attracted to do the Reiki level one.
mm,
Maybe 15 or 20 reasons were listed, and he asked me to circle the three that stood out most for me.
mm,
And I only remember one of them now. It was that I circled three, but one really stood out, and that was heal the healer first, and
mm.
then heal others.
Yeah.
And yeah, I guess as I said before, I was really drawn to the idea of self healing,
Mm,
and I think it makes sort of sense that you would, if you go to see someone who you want to help you to heal,
mm,
then you're going to want them to be in a good place within themselves. I
mm.
think
Yeah.
um, gives you a bit more trust around them, um, and I think that there's almost like this paradox with being a Reiki healer,
Mm.
where the person is actually healing themselves, and it makes you wonder, what am I doing here?
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
you don't really like want to take credit for someone else's healing,
Yeah.
and I do believe that the person's healing themselves,
Mm.
but you also want to acknowledge that there is something we bring to the party.
Yeah.
I think that is offering the person the space to heal
Yeah.
them. Like
Yeah.
for me, it was really, as I said before, my friend Suzanne, when she was doing her level two and I was her case study, it really felt incredible that her intentions and her energy was towards my healing.
Mm.
Um, I I wasn't sure I'd really come across that before, or maybe I just hadn't been open to it before.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that someone else wants me to heal and feel good.
Yeah.
It was quite powerful.
Yeah. How long did it take for your throat to sort itself out then?
Interestingly, I'm actually feeling it now a bit, and
Mm.
it it I'd say that before um, it did get a lot better, and it was over a period of a couple years probably.
Mm.
But I think more important than it healing in and of itself was that I would just didn't become so obsessed with it.
Mm.
And something that Suzanne asked me in that first, it was not, it might have been the first session. It was definitely in one of the sessions we had, one of the 5 sessions. She asked me, whether the issue with my throat had started around the time that I'd started to perform live music and sing my songs.
Mm,
And it did. It pretty much coincided to within a month
mm,
with me going out and performing at open mic nights around London.
yeah.
And she sort of surmised that it was really like an opening up of the throat chakra, that I was really beginning to express myself.
Yeah, yeah.
And something that I'm really open to as a healer, like really open to, is that when people have an ailment, sometimes it's not a negative thing. Sometimes it's actually a sign that something positive is happening, like the opening up of a chakra.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
It can feel uncomfortable.
Yeah.
um, and but it's quite comforting to know that even though you're going through something uncomfortable and painful, that actually it's part of a process of healing.
Mm,
You
yeah.
know, and I couldn't live without singing my songs and expressing myself in that way. It's been beautiful, you know,
Yeah.
over the last 6 or 7 years. Um, and if you know that was a part of it, this feeling of discomfort in my throat, then that was part of my journey.
Yeah. Yeah, that's spot on what you're saying there. I was talking to someone last week, and they were going through a bit of emotional stuff and what have you, and then like a few days later, they came out with like these cold like symptoms. They had like a sore throat and stuffy nose and things like that, and she said, "Oh, she said, I've got this, I've got this cold now." I said, "Well, I said it's probably actually your body healing itself from the emotional stress you've been under." Oh, well, does that happen? I said, well, yeah, that's like your body is he repairing itself from the stress and the emotions, and one of she was saying ways for it to do that is to have cold-like symptoms because you're purging and you're getting rid of stuff that you don't need, and that's how the body repairs itself. And like you say, sometimes things happen that can be uncomfortable, but it's just something for us to be aware of, that there is change taking place and there is healing taking place as well. And it's interesting you talk about the throat, because every time I do a Reiki course, because I don't really talk that much in my everyday life. I'm usually quite quiet, really. I'm quite introverted. But obviously, when I'm teaching, I talk all day for 2 days. And at the end of the 2 days, usually a day or two after, I start getting the cold-like symptoms. It doesn't really come into anything. It comes and goes very, very quick. I get a sore throat, and basically that's because of the overactive throat chakra, because it's something that I don't use that often. It's opening up. I've used it more than what I normally do. It's created like maybe a little bit of issue in the sinuses, or or the glands and what have you. But that's just, again, that's just part and parcel of the healing journey. And it's, I suppose it's a symptom that your body is healing and repairing itself. Whereas a lot of modern medicine try to deal with the symptom rather than just allowing it to just do what it needs to do.
Mm. Yeah, I really relate to that. It doesn't seem natural to us, I think, because of how we've been conditioned, that feeling a pain or an illness would be the sign of something positive.
Mm,
We want
yeah,
to get rid of it.
yeah,
So it's really interesting to subvert that and
yeah.
start acknowledging that maybe it's because something positive has been going on.
Mm,
And it's
yeah.
quite hard to know what to do because you don't want to feel ill, but you
Yeah,
do
yeah,
want to heal.
yeah, yeah,
I went through a phase where I think four people in a row that I gave Reiki to, maybe, they all came down ill. And I was wondering, like, is there something wrong with me? Like you want to tell people, oh, it can be a positive sign, when you start getting ill. But
yeah.
really, it's quite a bad advertisement for your Reiki. isn't it? Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, come and get Reiki and then have the flu.
Yeah, it's happened every time that I've had a couple of times I've had like Akashic readings, and they've done work on that level, and they've said, oh, because of the work we've done today, you probably will come down with cold and flu-like symptoms. A few days later, I come down with the cold and flu-like symptoms. It's just one of them things. Is like I say, it's just the body trying to purge and shift stuff and allow things to move.
Mm.
Um, so what was it like between level one and level two for your Reiki? Did you feel any kind of, suppose, physiological, psychological changes? Were there any changes in life in general?
I'd have to try and think back. There are specific things that come up for me, so
Mm,
I'll start with that. My journey has just been a really gradual um, improvement
mm,
in my emotional health, my physical health, my relationships. Um, it's been really subtle and beautiful.
mm,
Um, when I was growing up, I was um, really skeptical about these kind of things,
mm.
but really interested by it. Like I had just a real like I wanted it all to be true. I loved magic, and I wanted to
Yeah, yeah.
as a kid I wanted to believe all of that. Um, but like I couldn't quite bring myself to believe it.
Yeah.
So as I say, I came to Reiki really on a physical level. I wanted to heal this issue with my throat,
Mm,
and the spiritual side of it kind of followed,
yeah.
which
Yeah.
was quite nice. That's been a part of my journey. So I remember in that year between level one and level two, because I did level one in 2018, level two around the same time of year in 2019
Mm,
spring. And I remember met my friend Jess, who was I'd met her at a shamanic drumming sort of event
mm,
that my friend Steve was running, and she was a level two practitioner, and we would do these Reiki shares. We started to do Reiki shares
mm.
on her boat. She lived on a boat at that
Oh,
time.
fab. Yeah, wow.
Yeah. So there was one time where I went to her boat, and I would give her Reiki and she would give me Reiki, and there was just this amazing thing that happened during a session that when she was giving me Reiki, I was in that state that I sometimes get into when somebody's giving me Reiki, somewhere in between being asleep and being awake, and
Mm,
your mind's in a really creative space. And I started to try and, for some inexplicable reason, try and think of the song for the theme tune for the TV program Neighbours, if you remember
right.
that show, the Australian TV show.
Yeah.
The song is really, most people who have ever seen it would know the song. Neighbours, everybody needs good neighbours. um, but for some weird reason, in this like half dream, half awake state, I couldn't, for the life of me, remember how the song went. Um, so anyway, the session finished, and after the session, Jess would sort of relay things that came up for her during the session,
Mm,
which is something that I've taken on as well, and I do that. It's been really lovely to sort of learn that from her and take that on into my own practice.
mm,
So she would sort of say that she'd pictured these animals. I think she said she saw a dog and wasn't too sure what that represented.
mm.
And then she said, and something else that came up was, this is her speaking, she was, something else that came up, I don't even know why I'm telling you this, but for some reason this TV show Neighbours came up for me. And I was just like, yeah, me too. And we
Yeah,
both
yeah.
just sort of like laughed and
Yeah,
looked at each other and were just like, what is
yeah,
going on?
yeah.
I don't think either of us had had something like that come up before,
Mm,
something kind of psychic or telepathic.
yeah.
Um, and I remember just when I left that evening, as I was walking home, just laughing my entire journey home, just at the complete absurdity of this really inexplainable, mystical thing
Yeah.
that had happened. And um, and it's interesting that when I went to sleep that night, and the next morning I woke up, literally woke up with the thought that, oh, maybe she'd been humming the neighbor's theme tune while she was giving me Reiki, and maybe that's why I was thinking about it. The
Yeah.
skeptical mind just sort of tried to explain what happened. Um, she was studying shamanism at that time, and we spoke about it afterwards. She said that she'd spoken to her teacher who was teaching her shamanism, and that he had said it was pretty much just the spiritual world just joking around with us,
Mm. Yeah.
like a cosmic joke,
Mm.
that basically telling us that we're on the right path, like
Yeah.
this is something to explore and something to
Mm.
enjoy. And that's really how I took it. Like
Yeah.
even before she said that, actually, I just took it as like that was amazing. That was like, it felt like a miracle to
Yeah.
me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Miracles are supposed to be, blind people seeing, or someone who's dead coming back to life or something. But for me, it was neighbors.
Yeah. Maybe you were thinking of neighbors because you didn't have any being on a boat.
Could be, yeah. Maybe we'd been like just saying neighbors all night before that and just planting
That's
the idea.
that's yeah, that's a really, really fantastic story. The fact that you picked up on that. And it does happen. You do kind of get into that tuned in state where you do just receive random stuff, random messages from the ether, from the etheric plane or the astral plane, wherever it comes from. Um, it's a beautiful place, and that place that you're talking about, where you're in that state just between like steep sleep and awake, it's like that almost like a theta state that you're in. It's just such a heavenly place to be, and it's probably as close to being in spirit, I suppose, than in your physical body, because you're just so relaxed and so peaceful. And every time I have a session, receive Reiki or give Reiki, that's just how people just leave, just floating, just feel so much lighter. It's just a wonderful, wonderful place to be. And that's where amazing things happen. Miracles do happen in that state. So yeah, you just kind of tune in on that frequency, and you were both obviously so deeply connected that this information just comes through. I know I was working with a lady quite a while ago, and she was actually having issues with a hip. So for the majority of the session, I was focused on the hip and the foot as well, because she was having issues with her foot. So I just remained around those areas and worked on them. Um, and it was her first ever session of Reiki, and it was really, really deep and really relaxing and very, very peaceful. And we got to the end of it, and I was just like giving her some like little bits of feedback, and I just said to her, I kept getting the word Parkinson's, and she said, "Oh, that's unusual because I work with people that have Parkinson's." And I said, "Oh, right." And it's that little bit of tuning in to, I suppose, their psyche on some level, that you just do tap into that, other little bits came up that she could like connect with. But I mean, she really, it kind of like took her aback a little bit, and she didn't know. She was like, wow. She said, I don't really know what to say. But she said, I didn't have any expectations either. I said, well, that's the best way to go into a session, is have no expectations. Don't think that, after one session, miracles are going to happen or this is going to happen. Just, just let it be and let it do what it needs to do. And that's the best way of going into a Reiki session.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. Sometimes it can seem quite
Mm.
paradoxical, because it's like that thing of like when you really want something, and then but intuitively, the moment that I don't want this anymore,
Mm.
that's when I'll get it. But
Yeah.
how do you not want it?
Yeah.
It's like the
Yeah.
idea of like going in, if you've got some kind of ailment, it's quite
Yeah.
natural to like go in thinking, oh, I really hope this fixes my
Yeah.
throat issue or my hips or my, this pain in my feet.
Yeah.
But the key is to actually not care.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
Like,
that's it. It's just
yeah.
coming from a place of um I don't know, like a place of well, just no expectations and like indifference really, just being in the middle, and just
Hmm.
whatever happens, happens. It is just
Yeah, the
let it
beauty
be.
of accepting Reiki, of going to see a Reiki practitioner, is that your main objective is nothing.
Mm,
Like
yeah.
there's just nothing that you
Yeah.
need to do.
Yeah.
Just lie there and just whatever happens, happens. And
Yeah.
whether that means that your mind's going in a million paces or whether that means that you just relax and just get some respite from the world for
Mm,
45 minutes or however long it is,
yeah.
that just let it be. There's nothing you need to do.
Yeah.
I'm interested in asking actually, because you said that you focused most of that session on her, I think you said her hips and her feet.
Mm.
Like, how has your practice, your own individual practice, differed from what you were taught when you were taught the level one, the level two, the master? Have you sort of taken that on and made it your own, would you say?
Yeah. Yeah. It's changed a little bit. Not masses, but it has changed a little bit. And I have added little bits into it that I've discovered have helped people or made a change or yeah, just little things, little additions really. Um I mean I'm holding it actually, but dowsing being one of them. I was never sort of we never used a dowse in my lessons when I was learning. Although we did talk about it on more of a spiritual sort kind of thing, trying to get
You mind
answers.
just explaining what that is for anyone who doesn't know who's
Oh,
watching?
dowse, yeah. So it's well, people might be more aware of it as being called like a pendulum. And basically it's you just hold it and just ask it to give you a sign for yes and a sign for no. Well, it's going around now for yes. So you give it a yes and then a sign for no, and it goes left and right. And that's kind of like um that's your level to work from, really. So you know that whatever questions you want to ask, as long as they're yes and no answers, you can get a yes or a no answer. And the interesting thing about it, and something I've discovered within myself, is before the pendulum gives you the answer, you already know it, because claircognizantly it's already there. And basically, the answer is channeling through your energy, through your arm, and into the pendulum. And it's a really, really great way of developing your intuition, your inner energy, and your inner knowing as well. Really, really quite a powerful way to be able to tune into that. And it takes time. It takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of patience and practice to be able to connect um, on that level. And meditation is probably the best way to start if you're wanting to like tune into your intuition a little bit more deeply and just calm the mind and stop the monkey mind. And once you start to get over that, um, things just start popping into place. And that's kind of like what happened with me on my journey, and that's why I discovered Reiki. It was through meditation and quite a few years of meditation, which kind of like pushed me in the direction to change things in my life from where I was with my mental health and anxiety and things, and decided to change jobs. And then that position I was in at the time actually, it came up for redundancy, and I thought, oh, this is a bit of a synchronicity. So yeah, so I kind of like, well, is this my good chance to step out and leave and get somewhere different? Went somewhere different and went to work in a coffee shop, Cafe Nero actually. And it was in that coffee shop where we were just cleaning up one night, and I noticed these leaflets on the mantelpiece about Reiki. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. And I knew the word key chi, in China, prana, but ki obviously in Japan being about energy, but I didn't know what the Rei was. Um, and years previously to that, I used to do a Japanese martial art known as Aikido, so that's where I knew where the word ki came from. And so there was something there that internally I thought, I need to know a little bit more about this. And then the guy that was actually on the leaflets was my now Reiki master who used to go in the coffee shop every day. So we struck up a conversation, struck up a friendship, and I was just talking about it, wanting to know more about it. And he said, "Why don't you just come along? Come." He said your first session with me is free, um, and then after that you just pay as you go. So I went along just as a free trial and did the session and kind of like floated out on a cloud, and I was like, "Wow, what the hell was that?" That was just like amazing, and just felt so peaceful and empowered within myself because I decided to take those steps for me. Um, and the meditation, the Reiki, everything combined, it opened the floodgates to so much more. Um, and then I found out that he taught it, and I was just like, I need to learn. I need to learn how to do this. I need to learn how to be able to teach people, and I just knew that was something I had to do. And here we are today, like 4 or 5 years later. So,
Beautiful.
mm,
So do you think you picked up some of your practice directly from your Reiki master, as in like um, how he was with you, that you would then bring that onto your patients?
yeah, yeah. It was very gentle energy, and the first few sessions I ever had with him as well, I was starting to be more aware of clairvoyance and my clairvoyant ability, because when he was giving me the Reiki, I kept seeing um members of his family in spirit. Like, obviously, I had my eyes closed, but I could see them in my mind, like in my mind's eye, and I was describing them. And I saw one of his spirit guides that he worked with as well, which was a Native American Indian. And Yeah, and then after my Reiki one attunement, that's when I became more aware of my spirit guides, where I saw them in visions, and clairvoyant and clairsentient things as well that were coming through, and just these amazing feelings, that I certainly wasn't alone in the room, and a great connection of energy, and messages as well that happened. And I kept the first guide that I really like, the first human guide that I came to connect with, I kept hearing the word Hayoka over and over again. I had no idea what this word meant, but it was just constant in my head. And I was just like, if this is someone or something I need to know, then can you put this word into my reality so I can be aware of what it actually means? Because I don't know what it means. And then like the next day, I put on my YouTube feed, and the first video on the top of the feed was Hayoka, and what the Hayoka were. And basically the again, Native American, and they are the Hayoka is part of every tribe. They're like the empath, very, very powerful empaths. But they're also the entertainers, the poets, the musicians, the magicians, the shamans, the witch doctors, they vary from tribe to tribe. But when you see pictures of them, they're bloody scary looking. They are quite spooky when you actually see them. But Yeah, and that was kind of like my first connection to the first, like, kind of, I suppose, human guide. And uh, and then she started giving me a name. And again, I had no idea what the word meant. So I said, look, if this is you and you want to connect to me, and you're here for my highest good, just let me feel your presence, let me see you, let me feel you, whatever you need to do. And it was just like this kind of like a whoosh of energy, just like kind of like went through me and then back in me, and then just sort of like went up my whole body. And I was just sort of encased in this energy of just the most beautiful love, energy. It was just, oh, it was just euphoric. It was amazing. I haven't felt anything like that since. But yeah, it was evidence enough to me that they were there and they were real, and I wasn't going nuts.
So was that when you were giving yourself Reiki, or was that in a meditation or
That was
something?
just during like a meditation, and after my Reiki 1 attunement, and obviously I was doing like a lot of self-healing, and but yeah, that was just during a meditation, and just made that connection during a meditation, and it was really really powerful, really beautiful. Yeah,
Mm. Yeah, that's amazing. Like all of what you just said, it's really a lot. There's a lot of
yeah, yeah.
amazing things that happened after your like Reiki level
Yeah,
one.
there's, I mean, I do explain what's happened to my students after my Reiki 1, and I think maybe that's kind of like quite unique, really. I know my Reiki master, when he had his Reiki 1 attunement, he said, because he's not really a visual person, he's more clairaudient, and he said the only thing that he remembers seeing during his Reiki 1 was just seeing like these mountains, almost like in Tibet or China or whatever. Um, and how he was like kind of like above them and looking down over them. And after the attunement, he said his teacher could see that he was a little bit kind of out of whack. So they'd said, look, just go and sit outside, and just get some air, let yourself ground and whatever. And he said he remembered going to sit under this tree, and the only thing he really focused on was he was really focused on the tree roots and just observing the tree roots. And that was, I suppose, that was him kind of like coming back to earth and grounding his energies just by connecting to the tree's roots.
Mm. Yeah, it's such a powerful experience, I think, getting
Mm.
attuned to the Reiki.
Mm.
It's hard to put your finger on it really,
Yeah,
but I just remember feeling this immense sense of clarity that I'd never really felt before. And it's
yeah,
hard to really describe or define. I
yeah.
just in my communication with others around that time when I'd just been attuned to my level one,
Mm.
um, just felt this clarity.
Yeah,
Yeah, and I guess like looking back on it, it was a real integral part of my life. So
mm.
there's a
Yeah.
it's clear that it was a time where things started to become clearer, and
Mm.
yeah, sometimes that can be in this amazing immediate way,
Mm.
and other times it's really subtle, and you
Yeah,
look back in 2 years and you think, wow, I've come a long way.
yeah, yeah, absolutely, definitely. Yeah, I mean, things are a lot more subtle now for me. Definitely, it's quieting down a lot now. Especially, I mean, when I did my Reiki Master teacher course, because after my level 2, there was all sorts of like strange spiritual goings on and weird dreams and all sorts of strange stuff. And then when I did my level 3, everything just like just went so quiet. Everything just stopped, and I thought, oh, have I been unplugged? Like what's happened? But it was just time for me to just like just allow the energy just to calm down and work on myself, and over time it started to like build up a little bit. But yeah, it's a lot more subtle now. More of a I work more from kind of like a feeling. I do still get like a bit of clairvoyance and a little bit of clairaudience and stuff, but it's more from a feeling that I work from now. So yeah, it's interesting how we change and develop and become more aware of ourselves, and our energy in different ways.
Yeah, yeah, I think the calming down is maybe like a symptom of just having this like innate inner power and confidence
Mm, mm,
that you don't really need anything like
yeah,
drastic.
yeah, yeah,
It's just within you now,
yeah, yeah.
and it's a part of the journey. But maybe I don't know. Do you feel a sense of like longing for for the more like drastic and like spiritual
Mm,
things.
sometimes, sometimes I'd like to see more and experience more sometimes. But then other times I'm just like, oh, you know what, I'm quite happy just the way it's going because when, like you say, when you look back at where you came from and where you are now, reflection and how time passes, it makes you realize, you've come a long way from where you were. So it's good to look back occasionally just to see how far you have come and where you are now, in the world and on your own journey. Um, but yeah, it's interesting. I do try to dabble a little bit more in um this, I suppose, like the psychic stuff and connections and things like that with energies, but that just comes and goes. It happens whenever it needs to happen, and it's nothing. It doesn't happen all the time, so it's just one of them things, I suppose.
Do you offer a specific like service for people so they can obviously come and get Reiki? Do you offer? I think you do sort of tarot and things like that, like things where they are
Yeah,
actually looking
I
for
do
something more
use
psychic.
Yeah, I do use tarot occasionally, or sometimes oracle cards. But it's not really something that a lot of my clients really ask for. They're more interested in just the healing. So yeah, I dip into it every now and again, but I tend to use the cards more just for either myself. I use them for distant clients. I'll always pull them a couple of oracle cards just to give some guidance.
For
But
anyone who doesn't know what that is, that's distance Reiki, where you're not in the same room or even necessarily the same country as the
yeah,
person receiving the
yeah,
Reiki. It's really incredible. Maybe maybe we'll touch on that in a future conversation, or maybe we can
yeah.
talk about it in a bit. But
It's a totally different ball game. Distance Reiki, and it's so powerful. I love distance Reiki. I love in-person Reiki as well, being with the client and being with the person. But yeah, for me, it's a much different connection. It's more going into the energetic realm, and going into that frequency. Whereas being in person, for me, it's more of an empathic connection with the person, um, which is totally different for me. But yeah, it is. It's just a wonderful other way of being able to give Reiki to somebody in a different country from your therapy room, wherever you are. So yeah, it's just a wonderful add-on, which is something that obviously you learn more about in level two, with the addition of symbols and things.
yeah, so I had a bit of a journey with the distance Reiki as well.
Mm,
So when Suzanne was, I was her case study.
mm,
It was I would have, I think, three face-to-face sessions lying down, one session where I sat down, and one distance Reiki session.
mm.
And she'd explained that to me. And then it came to the distance Reiki session, and I was like, what time do I have to come round? Because I didn't know what distance Reiki was. And she was like, no, you don't have to come round to mine this time. Just stay in your flat. And I was like, what do you mean? Are you going to come round, or how does this work? She was like, no, I'll just be in my flat. You'll be in your flat, and I'll send you Reiki. And I was like, huh? um, yeah, so she explained, just find a quiet space to lie down, just switch your phone off. You'll know when to get up. Don't worry about that. No need to set an alarm. You'll just naturally come to. And so I did. I lay down, I switched my phone off. About 40 minutes later or so, oh my goodness, I felt so lightheaded. Like I get quite bad headaches that I feel pretty consistently. And I just felt this relief that it was such a nice feeling.
Mm.
And we spoke afterwards, and she was like, how was it? And I was like, wow, that's a thing that works. That is so weird.
Yeah.
And then I suppose it would have been roughly a year and a half to 2 years later that I started doing distance Reiki for other people. And I had done my level 2, which is where you learn how to do that. And there was a part of me at first, the first few times, it was like, I don't really know if this is working. Like I'll obviously do it, and
Mm.
but there's my natural skeptical mind was like,
Yeah.
who knows what's happening here and whether they'll feel anything. And yeah, there was a time where I was giving Reiki, distance Reiki, to a friend of mine, and she sort of has a very visceral reaction to Reiki. She's really receptive to it.
Mm.
And so I gave the distance Reiki, and then I rang her up afterwards. Was like, "How was that?" And she was like, "That was incredible. Like I was feeling tingles all over my body, like waves of warmth and comfort, and I felt like I was in a cocoon. My heart was pounding, and I just started laughing halfway through, like uncontrollably. I was just like, good grief, what have I done?" Like, but
It worked.
yeah, like it was part of my journey. It felt incredible to
Yeah.
get that from her. And
Yeah.
yeah, like I started out, again when I was getting the level 2 done with my Reiki master Steve, and he said, yeah, so with distance Reiki you can give yourself distance Reiki for
Mm.
the future. And I was
Yeah.
like, okay, man. But then I remember, yeah, about would have been summer 2019, I think, I started to put on a couple of my own gigs. And I'm someone who is not naturally very confident on stage. It's been another journey for me, but I've grown in confidence. But at first, yeah, I suffered from stage fright for years and years and years.
Mm.
It put me off, performing. So I was really nervous about running this gig. It was a single launch, and I would actually be hosting it, first time ever doing that. And I just thought, well, I'll just send myself Reiki for a month's time
Mm.
and sort of set that intention to feel calm and confident. And I felt amazing that night, like no real nerves at all. I felt really confident and calm. And
Yeah.
yeah, you don't know whether it's just I actually had a sense that the Reiki really helped. But
Mm.
if you don't believe in it, you could easily say, well, that was just your
Yeah.
natural confidence. But you know, something something else happened after that, where it was the same woman who was really receptive to the distance Reiki. She said that she wanted Reiki for uh, the next day. Basically, she was seeing some clients for her job, and
Mm.
she always gets really nervous about it. So I said to her, "I'm quite busy, but I'll send you Reiki tonight." And yeah, that was it. So you'll probably be asleep, but I'll just send it to you.
Yeah.
So about 11 p.m., I sent the Reiki, but I decided that I wouldn't send it for immediately. I would send it for when she was seeing her clients the next day. So around
Yeah.
6 p.m. the next day, I set the intention that that would be
Yeah.
when she'd sort of feel calm and at peace.
Yeah.
And I waited until around like 10 p.m. the next day to sort of ask her. I said, I sent you the Reiki yesterday. How did you feel?
Mm.
And she said, to be honest, like in the morning, I felt quite anxious. Didn't feel great. But then around the time I was seeing my clients, I felt like really weirdly calm.
Mm.
And that only then I told her, like, I'd actually sent the Reiki to you specifically for that time.
Yeah.
And again, it was like, for me, there was almost an expectation that that would be her answer. I was really hoping that that would be what she said. And
Yeah.
when she said it, it really just affirmed to me that, there is
Yeah.
something going on here
Something's
that's like,
going on. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I know, like some people, when I've sent Reiki to them overseas, like for the next day in America or Australia or whatever, um, and they always say, even because obviously they've got the time difference as well, so it's a totally different time zone. But it's booked for that time. Um, and they feel it exactly on the minute, it starts. And you're just like, it's just it's that's what I mean. It's just so profound and so powerful. It just anyone that gets the opportunity to be able to enjoy some distance Reiki, or even be added to a Reiki healing list, just for where the Reiki master might or the Reiki practitioner might want to just send for 10 minutes or whatever, wherever you are. It's such a wonderful way to just empower yourself a little bit. Um, and yeah, it just opens the floodgates to so much more. Distance Reiki, definitely. Yeah.
Sometimes in my own practice, I sort of substitute a meditation for sending distance Reiki,
Mm,
either to myself or there's some people who have sort of given me permission because it's part of what we were taught, what surely what I was taught, that so whoever you're giving Reiki to would needs to give you permission to do it.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
If someone's given me permission, then I can just send it. And
Yeah.
sometimes I'll do that. I'll do it. Yeah, even on the tube in London on the way
Yeah,
to work,
that's
I
the
might send the
beauty of it.
intention.
You don't need to be actually sat in, in a therapy space or anything like that. It's just your intention alone, and you just be in that space and just allow it to flow and allow it to happen. It's the wonderful connection because we are all connected, and we're all on that frequency, and it's just allowing it to happen, and as soon as they've decided, yeah, okay. I'm open to having Reiki, and they've set their intention, and they've given permission, and it will be as it is. So yeah, it's beautiful,
Yeah,
beautiful.
there was a sense I think when I was starting out that Reiki was really sacred, and I had to save it for when I needed it or when I was in that zone.
Mm,
And then I just thought, why is it's just become a part of my life, like,
yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
it still feels sacred, but it doesn't feel necessarily that it has to be, extreme or saved for particular events or when I'm feeling a particular way. Maybe it kind of goes back to, what we were saying, what you were saying about how it would be you'd get lots of sort of clairvoyance and visions and things like that, and then it kind of calmed down.
Mm,
And maybe that was kind of similar for me in terms of like I wanted it to be this sporadic but really like flamboyant or like really sacred thing.
mm,
Whereas now I'm just like on the tube,
mm.
just give myself a little Reiki
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
for a couple minutes, 5 minutes.
yeah. Yeah, it is that easy, and that it's just so, yeah, it's just so flexible. The things you can do with Reiki. We have well, we still have it. It's a PlayStation 4. And the actual controller at the time, a few years ago, it stopped working. It wasn't connecting to the PlayStation properly. So I thought, oh, you know what? I'll send it some Reiki. Let's just give this a whirl. So I didn't even like hold the control. I just visualized it in my mind, and I just drew the power symbol over it, and then just intended for it to get some Reiki, and just visualize that for 5-10 minutes, something like that. Um, and then started working, then connected back to the PlayStation, and it still works to this day. So like, yeah,
Yeah,
there you
that's
go.
amazing. Yeah, I did the same thing with a set of Bluetooth headphones. I remember they just conked out, and I was like, come on, work, god damn you. And then I was like, yeah, maybe I'll just send them some Reiki. And I did the power symbol thing and then
Yeah,
flick them on.
yeah.
I think they subsequently died a couple months later, but
Give
me
it,
and
give it
headphones
a
is bad.
little bit of life, I suppose, for a little bit longer.
Yeah, exactly. And it was nice to sort of just have that experience. And again, there was almost like what I was saying about sending that message
Mm,
um, to my friend and or expecting her to say that she felt calm hours and hours later.
yeah,
There was sort of like an expectation within me that when I send the Reiki to these headphones, they're going to work.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's
I
it's
must admit though, I'm pretty sure I've tried it on things and it hasn't worked. So
mm,
it's not a foolproof 100% going to
yeah, yeah,
fix your
yeah,
PlayStation, but
yeah. Well, it's good when it does.
yeah, yeah, for sure. Otherwise, you can become like a Reiki electrician or something, go around fixing people's light bulbs.
Yeah. Let me just pop. Actually, I don't need to come round. I'll do it from my own house.
Yeah, distance fixing of light bulbs.
Yeah. So, obviously you've talked about music a little bit, and you want to talk about music a little bit. So, yeah, what's your kind of influences for getting into music? When did you start learning music and playing?
I started, oh man, that's been a journey as well. So I've been a lover of music since I was born, pretty
Mm.
much. I remember like 3 years old, I was really into Dire Straits, which my dad was into too. I wore a headband and had my little acoustic guitar, and I was pretending to be Mark Knopfler.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, and but I didn't actually. I had the obligatory piano lessons, recorder lessons, and violin lessons, and really just didn't take to it at all. I was into I was pretty much into rock music, and I wasn't really interested in learning classical or learning technique.
Mm.
So I gave up quite quickly.
Yeah.
And then in my teens, I think I took up drums. I was drawn to that. Um, I think I had was in like a couple of bands at school, but I talked about stage fright before, and whenever we had a gig lined up or like a school performance, I'd start to get ill like
Mm.
a couple of days before, and I'd back out and feel like I was letting them down, but also feel like I can't do this.
Yeah.
And so I gave up. I drummed for about 3 years, and then I thought, what's the point really if you can't
Yeah.
perform?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
one thing if you're playing guitar and you can sing your songs at home, but if you're drumming and you can't drum
Yeah.
with other people, it's kind of pointless. Well, it felt like that for me anyway. So it wasn't till I was actually like came home from university that I took up guitar. I remember like one Christmas, my brother got me a guitar, and he's a professional jazz guitarist. Um, so I would have been like 22 odd when I took up guitar.
Mm.
He taught me for about 2 years maybe. But within a few months of learning the chords and stuff, I got straight into writing songs because that was what I was really drawn to,
Mm.
writing. It felt like I found my calling really,
Yeah.
um, because I just love songs
Yeah.
and I love the idea of creating them. Um, and then yeah, it wasn't until 7 years later that I started playing live. People would ask me maybe 3 or 4 years into it, do you ever see yourself playing at a gig or an open mic? And I was like, to be honest, no. Like I have stage fright and I can't do it and get too way too nervous. Um, but sometimes we put identities on ourselves. I was talking
Mm.
to a friend about this just yesterday, actually. you know, I always thought I was scared of flying. Um,
Yeah.
but then I hadn't flown for a while. And last year I went to Lisbon and I just decided that I wasn't scared of flying anymore. I was like that. I've put that label on myself, and I tell people that I'm scared of flying, but maybe I'm not.
Yeah.
Like, and to be fair, I did the same thing about depression. I had depression for a good couple decades,
Mm.
like 20 odd years. And I thought I'd have it forever. I thought that was just me.
Mm.
And then I started to wonder what would it be like to say I don't have depression.
Yeah. Yeah.
I,
Yeah.
I didn't necessarily believe it, but I just started to wonder what it would be like to just say it. Just try not having that label.
Mm.
Um, yeah, so I can't with the music. I eventually, for whatever reason, I just picked up my guitar when I was 29, went out to an open mic, and I was nervous. I felt nervous. Weirdly, my body felt more nervous than my mind because my body was shaking. My
Yeah.
mind kind of felt okay-ish, but
Mm.
when I went to play the guitar, my fingers were not doing what they were supposed to do, and it was horrible,
Yeah.
man. It was brutal. I didn't pick up my guitar for a month after that, and I thought I might never pick that up again. That was disastrous.
Mhm.
but something just kept on drawing me back to it. I kept writing, I kept playing, and for some weird reason, I kept going back to open mics.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
mean, I had like I met some incredible people, people that are still really great friends. Me and my buddy Rob, we would just go to open mics together all the time, and for a couple of years, neither of us really enjoyed it. We were just so nervous, and if we didn't have each other, like to just have a laugh and gear each other on, it would have probably been unbearable. But we
yeah,
were like, why do we keep doing this? We just keep
yeah,
going out and torturing ourselves. But you know what's the alternative? You go out and you don't pursue your dream. Like
yeah,
that's no good either.
yeah,
You have
yeah,
to just dive in.
yeah. It's the best way of doing it. I've found is just to keep doing it. As much as you might be in that sort of anxious, nervous place, once you get up there and you do it and you get off, you think, actually that was all right. That felt pretty good, and I might not have played to the best of my abilities, but you know what? I've done it, and that's step one. And you just the more you do it, the more you get, it becomes just easier, I suppose. You just become more able to deal with that nervousness. But I think everyone gets nervous whenever they go up to play because if you weren't nervous, then I think you're just not human, I don't think. And I think even some of the most famous people that get up and play in front of stages, like stadiums and whatever, will get a bit of nerves before they go on. Then once they get out there, they're just like again, like you talk about like the labels, they put that label on themselves. They create that character. It's like when you see Ozzy Osbourne. I mean, I know he's not very well now, but you used to see him sort of like doddering around and talking like it's like not making any sense whatsoever. But as soon as he goes on that stage, like something takes over him and he becomes somebody else because he's created that image, that icon. And your level of belief and your perception of yourself and whatever labels you put on yourself, um, that is what you're going to create. So just keep doing it, keep pushing it. And that's kind of like what I did with open mic nights. I started off feeling like getting really nervous and thinking, oh God, what I've forgotten the words or the songs or whatever. But eventually it just happens, you just get used to it and everything just falls into place. But it can take a while. Yeah, it's like anything, I suppose.
Mm. Yeah, it's really true. I think a turning point for me was going from doing it really sporadically, like I was going to maybe one or two open mics per month.
Mm.
And doing it like that, I built up like a huge amount of pressure for each performance, because I'd
Yeah,
have a few weeks to practice, and I'd be like, got to remember the lyrics this time, like got to remember
yeah,
all the chords and everything. So when I inevitably messed it up, I'd sort of beat myself up, like, why'd you mess it up again this time? Like, without kind of having the wisdom to know that it was nothing to do with the practice, that the
mm.
nerves and stuff it's a whole other thing that you can't learn
Yeah,
at home. You can
yeah,
learn chords and you can learn lyrics, but you don't know how, sitting on a stage in front of other people is going to affect that.
yeah.
I having that wisdom and experience, really, it's wisdom that comes from experience. I think, I'll do things like I'll play the song slower when I play
Mm.
live. I'll play it slower than I do at home, slower than I'd like to, but it gives me just not that noticeably slower, and no one who's hearing it will know because they've never heard the song anyway.
Yeah,
But it buys myself a little bit of thinking time.
yeah.
So if it's a new song, especially, for example, I might not be comfortable with the lyrics.
Mm.
um so I might need that extra
Yes.
split seconds thinking time to know, like, if there's an instrumental bit before the second verse,
Yeah, yeah,
in my head I might be thinking, right, the next lyric, yeah, got
yeah, yeah.
it.
Just gives a bit of space, doesn't it? Um, yeah, yeah. That's a good technique, actually. That. Yeah.
Yeah, and then so I went from that to playing 4 nights a week probably at
Mm.
open mics, and doing that regularly enough really helped.
Yeah.
building every performance up to be this life-changing thing.
Yeah.
Just going out, meeting some people, playing a couple of songs, and if I messed it up, it was like back tomorrow.
Yeah.
You
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, so I did that for a good 2 3 years. Really helped growing confidence. Another thing that really helped was accepting praise from other people,
Mm.
and that's something that again I've really had to come to terms with
Yeah.
because I think I was so like self-deprecating that it was quite difficult for me to accept praise. But I also felt like I kind of needed it.
Mm.
I really liked hearing it, but I didn't want to come across as arrogant as
Yeah.
well. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
but I realized that if I downplayed it, like if someone said, "Oh, I really like that song" or something, and I said, "Oh, it's I kind of messed it up. It's not very good." Um, I realized that wasn't really helping me, and it wasn't helping them. It wasn't really serving anyone to do that.
Mm. Yeah.
Um, but that so then I decided I would just say something like thanks,
Yeah.
and then just sit with the silence, which can feel really awkward.
Yeah.
Um, but I preferred the awkwardness of silence to saying something that I didn't really believe or that was negative.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and I feel like now I'm quite comfortable that I can accept praise and that I can't, it's been such a part of my journey. It's just really kept me going and kept me writing more and growing my confidence.
Yeah.
And it hasn't gone to my head. Like it's not
Yeah.
something which I'm like I crave and that I really think like, oh goodness me, like I'm a superstar or anything like that. It's just
Yeah.
just like a nice medium ground where it's just really lovely.
Yeah. Kept grounded. That's good. Yeah. So, what sort of musical influences, um, did, I mean, who inspires you to like, who do you, obviously you grew up with Dire Straits and because your dad listens to Mark Knopfler, but was there anybody else that, sort of led you on that path a little bit? Who did you listen to?
Yeah, so after that it was Guns N' Roses and Pearl Jam and Nirvana, I guess.
Right.
And so that was like late 80s going into the early 90s. So
Yeah.
I was quite a cool kid, I
Yeah. Yeah.
was really, really into grunge, like
Yeah. Yeah.
Pearl Jam, Nirvana, Stone Temple Pilots, Alice in Chains, that kind of thing. Soundgarden, yeah.
Yeah.
Soundgarden, Super Unknown was the first album I bought. And then when I was at uni, or like just after uni, so just before I got my guitar, I became and started writing songs. I became massively into a singer-songwriter called Elliott Smith,
Right.
who's like an American singer-songwriter who wrote some of the songs for the film Good Will Hunting,
All right.
and yeah, he was nominated for an Oscar for one of those songs. I don't know if have you heard of him?
No, I've not heard of him.
Oh wow! So he's for me like just the best songwriter ever, and it was
Yeah.
like it really felt for a few years, maybe for like 3 years, I listened to like probably 90% of the music I listened to was just his music. He was really
Mm.
prolific. He made like probably 6 or 7 albums before he passed away at the age of 34.
Yeah.
But he also had lots of like unreleased music that was really amazing as well. So maybe like a couple hundred songs,
Mm.
just of the highest quality.
Yeah.
For me, that was like the pinnacle of what I felt like listening to music was. It made me feel all sorts of emotions. Um, Sometimes I would just cry uncontrollably listening to his music,
Yeah.
and looking back on it, it seems really fitting that I felt like I perfected my listening of music, and then I picked up the guitar and started to write songs.
Yeah. Yeah.
So as soon as I picked up the guitar, I was like, that is what I want to sound like.
Yeah.
Um, so for a while, I was just mimicking Elliott Smith,
Yeah.
but now I like to think that I, I don't, I really don't want to mimic anyone.
Yeah.
I just want to be slightly more original than that.
Be you.
Someone said that there is a danger when you write or when you perform that you're going to mimic your favorite artists.
Yeah.
And someone said something really interesting to me. Elliot Smith's a real cult figure, and I run these tribute nights for him and stuff like that. And there's some real like super fans like I am. And I was speaking to one of them, a woman who was writing a book on him, and she said, the thing that Elliot Smith was original. So if you want to be like Elliot Smith,
Mm.
be original. Don't be like him
Yeah,
physically. Physically, don't sing like him. Don't write like him. He was original. That's how you be like Elliot Smith. You be original. So I really took that to heart. It's like I don't want to sound like him. He was him. I
yeah,
want to sound like me.
yeah, yeah, that makes sense. Definitely. Yeah. Interesting, interesting. I know I think it was I was about 3 year old, and I remember I got a ukulele for Christmas. And I had that ukulele till I was about 9 or 10. I could never, just couldn't play it. Couldn't get away with it. And then around about probably about 10 and a half, I started getting more into music. Um, and uh and then I decided I listened to it was a concert at Wembley, I think it was at Wembley Arena, and it was Chris Rea Road to Hell tour. And I listened to his that concert and I thought, what is that? And who is singing that? And what is that sound that he's making with that guitar? And then I thought, "Ah, I want to try that. I want to try finding out what that is and learning guitar, I think that's what I want to do. So about 11-year old, I got this huge clunky Spanish guitar, acoustic classical guitar, and it was horrendous to play, but extremely difficult because obviously 11-year old had smaller hands. The strings are very high gauged off the neck, and took a lot of practice and perseverance of being able to keep the strings down because it was that much, especially with little fingers and things. Um, yeah, and then I started using paintbrushes, like the handles of a paintbrush is like a slide to like make
Mm.
make that noise. And then after a while, I was like, I want to get an electric guitar. Um, and my mum was like, "You're not getting that until you learn that one." I was like, okay. So I kept learning and persevering and learned some chords and things, and then eventually I'd saved up and got got an electric guitar, and it was a Gibson copy. And I got like a little amp with it, and yeah, then I could start playing like proper slide guitar and playing along to music, and that's kind of like how I really started off, was just like listening to music and just playing along with it, and just seeing how it sounded, and then doing my own little bits and my own little fills, and then as time goes on, you learn a little bit more, kind of like theory and what chords should go with where and all that sort of stuff. Um, yeah, and then as the years go by, you kind of like learn about the people that you've listened to. So obviously Chris Rea, Eric Clapton, Mark Knopfler, a lot of those sorts of people. Then you learn about where they came from and who they listened to and who they idolized. So then I was looking further down the old blues route. So looking more into like BB King and Robert Johnson, Lead Belly, Charlie Patton, all the early Delta blues stuff, and then you start learning about all these sort of like kind of quite supernatural stories that are linked with a lot of them, and a lot of mysticism around a lot of these old blues guys as well. Like Robert Johnson and selling his soul to the devil and all that sort of stuff, and how Lead Belly had killed various people and Howlin' Wolf, some of the stuff that he'd done, and you think, bloody hell, these are like some really dark characters, because they've come from Africa where all that kind of stuff like just happened anyway. Um, yeah, and then I kind of like got into like more the electric blue stuff, so like Muddy Waters, um, and it just went on from there, and then eventually started getting into doing like getting into a band, and I was actually in a band with my brother when I was about 16. And his music taste is like very eclectic. It's all over the place. But so he likes bands like The Fall, um, David Bowie, Gary Newman, Kraftwerk, really kind of all over the stuff. So he put a band together. So it was me, him, and a drummer. So we were like a power trio, I suppose. And we just played more like kind of electric sort of stuff, and then some of his own original stuff. And then I was probably in my 20s before I actually started like in a a band um playing more sort of bluesy stuff. And that's kind of like where it started off really. And then yeah, it's just continued, and then it was not the band I'm in currently, Melt, but the band before that, Two Blue, was where I did a lot more songwriting, song lyrics, and then me and the other guitarist, we did a lot of work together and put the chords and the words and fit everything together. Did quite a lot of gigging in that band, and eventually it just kind of like fizzled away, but it was good, you know. So we're just kind of like doing the same sort of thing now with the band I'm in currently. But yeah, I had probably a similar issue with you with open mic nights, but just the more you do it, the more you get used to it, and it just becomes a little bit easier. So yeah,
Yeah, I don't think I knew that you wrote songs because I think I've only ever seen you sort of perform the odd thing on your sort of Instagram or Facebook.
yeah,
It
yeah,
tends to be jamming along with with like a blues track or a rock track.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, you're obviously like a very skilled electric guitarist, but I didn't realize you were a songwriter too.
yeah, yeah. I've written quite a few songs over the years, for the band that I was in back then, and some of the songs I've kind of like adapted to be able to just play like solo, just play them on my own rather than having like a guitar riff driving it along and then chords and dipping in and out of that, just being able to keep it as simple and as basic for one person to do really.
So
Um,
does Melt play primarily just covers, or do you also play your original songs
it's
too?
primarily covers, but we have put a few originals in, but not many. We haven't put a lot in. It's mainly covers really. But yeah, again, it's quite blues based, but there's a few other bits in there. Bit of country, um, bit of uh, bit of all sorts really. JJ Cale, Santana, a bit of Clapton, Bob Dylan. Yeah, a bit of all sorts really in there. But yeah, it's primarily quite bluesy, than anything else. But yeah, it goes
Mm.
well, and we all gel together quite well, and the music fits together quite well. So we've
How
just
often do you meet up to jam?
yeah, we try to do every couple of weeks, and then we've got a gig like pretty much every month up until uh September, I think now. So we've got a gig every month, and then yeah, every couple of weeks we try and get together to have a bit of a jam and work on new stuff. We've been working on a Keith Urban song called "Somebody Like You." Just kind of, it's a nice foot tap of song. It's a really nice song, and we played it last month live, and it's the first time we've played it live, and we've only really had maybe two or three practices with it, and we were a bit like, oh, you know, not right overly overly comfortable with it yet. But I think the pressure kind of pushes you into actually performing it and doing it right, and it actually went really well, and yeah, it fit nicely in the set as well. So it was good. It was good to play it and give it an outing. Yeah,
Mm, nice. Yeah. Sometimes when things aren't sounding right or coming naturally, it's like an opportunity to learn something new or
yeah,
go out of your comfort zone a bit, and it can really enhance your music or
mhm,
whatever it is you're doing, really.
yeah, yeah,
But I
definitely.
love doing things different. I don't like the idea of just sort of writing the same songs using the same chords and same
Yeah,
lyrical themes. I like to have different themes and different sounds,
yeah,
sometimes quiet, sometimes a bit louder,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
mix things up a bit.
And I've seen evidence of that on your, I think it was on Facebook or YouTube, some of the videos. Yeah, some really beautiful, like kind of haunting ballads, and then some really kind of like heavier stuff as well. So yeah, it's a really nice eclectic mix. So keep doing it, keep doing
Oh,
it.
thanks, man.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, thanks a lot. And that's actually how we first connected because we're both part of the a Reiki group on
yeah, on
Facebook.
Facebook. Yeah, that's right.
And
Yeah,
I remember sort of following your pages,
yeah,
and then you followed me back, and
yeah,
then it's kind of a supporting each other kind of thing. But
yeah, yeah,
you then commented on one of my songs, and I was like, oh wow, that's so kind, man.
yeah.
And yeah, it was the start of a beautiful friendship.
Yeah, absolutely. And here we are, like, because that was probably like years ago. So
Yeah, it
yeah,
would have been 4 or 5 years maybe.
yeah,
Something like that.
it's been good. It's been good to watch each other's uh development, and keep in touch. But it's been nice to actually chat face to face. So
Mm.
anyway, I better scoot. But it's been lovely
Yeah.
chatting.
Yeah,
And
likewise. Can you just let us know a couple of your social media things if I'm posting this on mine so that
yeah,
we
I mean, I'll
find
link
you?
all of them below in the descriptions box on my channel. And I can send you the links over to you as well, so if you want to put them in the descriptions. But people can go over, check out Dan's YouTube, check out his music, check out his new Reiki YouTube channel, subscribe to his channel as well. If you've enjoyed this chat, a little bit of discovery about the both of us. And yeah, I look forward to having another chat again in the future with you. It's been really interesting.
Mm. Yeah, definitely. I'll be really, really keen to do that. And yeah, anyone who's watching on Ian's channel, uh, I'd love it if you could subscribe to my channel as well. Rising Vibes Reiki is where all my Reiki stuff is under. So that's on YouTube and Facebook and Instagram and even TikTok. That's as
Oh,
Rising
wow.
Vibes Reiki. And yeah, my music is under Kalebo, which is my surname, Caleb, with an O on the end. It's kind of a
Yeah,
nickname people gave me. So if anyone's interested in checking that out too, yeah, just hit me up.
awesome. Right. Well, thank you again, Dan. And yeah, we'll connect soon, and I'll speak to you off cam once we stop this. But yeah, thank you, and bye for now.
Cheers. Bye.